Caterpillar's Joliet plant once employed 7,000 workers who earned up to $28 an hour, building hydraulic components for heavy machinery in this classic Rust Belt city of Illinois. And this is the story of what happened when those jobs disappeared forever. For nearly 70 years, the Caterpillar plant along Route 6 wasn't just a factory. It was the economic heartbeat of a blue-collar city that defined itself through industry. When the final 285 workers received their layoff notices on November 7, 2018, it marked the end of an ERA that began in 1951. But here's what makes Joliet's story particularly fascinating. While those manufacturing jobs vanished, the total number of available jobs did not. Amazon now employs roughly the same number of people in Will County that Caterpillar once did in Joliet alone. The question is not whether jobs returned, it is whether the wages did. To understand what Joliet lost, you have to understand what Caterpillar represented. This wasn't just another factory closing. For more than a century, Joliet's sons and daughters worked at limestone quarries, steel mills, and countless factories that formed the lifeblood of this Des Plaines river town. Thanks to its strategic location linking Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River, plus 3 railroads and 2 interstate highways, Joliet built its economy on heavy industries, particularly steel making. The Caterpillar plant epitomized this industrial prosperity. At its peak, approximately 7,000 people earned what former workers described as excellent wages in blue-collar manufacturing. These weren't just jobs, they were careers that supported entire families across multiple generations. Workers could start at the plant straight out of high school and retire with dignity, owning homes, sending kids to college, and building the kind of middle-class life that defined the American dream. But even before the final closure, warning signs were everywhere. As one former worker named Gareth explained, "When I hired in, there were 2,300 shop floor employees, and we were in 5 buildings. In 2000, they went down to 1 building, and when I quit in May 2016, there were about 200 left working on the floor." The decline wasn't sudden. It was a slow strangulation that lasted decades. The beginning of the end started in the late 1970s, when Joliet began seeing its manufacturing base erode. By 1983, the city had the dubious distinction of having the highest unemployment rate in the nation. Caterpillar responded to economic pressures by announcing in 1985 that it would close one of its Joliet plants by the end of 1987 as part of cost-cutting measures. The workforce that once numbered 7,000 had shrunk to 3,500 by 1985. What happened next reveals the complex dynamics between corporate profits, worker concessions, and global competition. This was the era of NAFTA and the China shock, when millions of manufacturing jobs left America for cheaper overseas production. In 2012, nearly 800 Caterpillar workers struck for over 3 months in what would become a defining moment for both the plant and the broader labor movement. The workers were facing a 2-tier wage system that put them at $13 to $28 an hour, with newer employees earning roughly half of what veteran workers made. Tim O'Brien, a Caterpillar employee since 1974 and president of the local union, captured the workers' frustration. He said the strike vote was 94%, and that told you very clearly that everyone was being affected. But here is the bitter irony. While workers were being asked to accept wage freezes and benefit cuts, Caterpillar was posting record profits. The company's profit hit $4.09 billion in 2011, jumping 83% over 2010. CEO Douglas Oberhelman's pay soared 60% that year, to $16.09 million. The strike revealed the harsh realities of modern labor relations. Workers survived on just $150 a week in strike pay, while the union held over $100 million in its strike fund. One striker described the desperation. People's families were starving and houses were being repossessed. The only way I was able to hold out and not lose everything was because my father had passed away the year before and left me $10,000. Perhaps most insulting, before the strike, Caterpillar had ordered workers to train their own replacements, showing sophisticated and precise machinery to temporary workers in a matter of days rather than the months typically required. As one worker put it, it felt like we were fighting both the union and the company at times. After 3 months, the workers capitulated, accepting the company's terms, including a virtual pay freeze. Union leadership argued these concessions were necessary to save jobs. But Caterpillar had other plans. In 2015, the company announced it was shifting production to a facility in Monterrey, Mexico, specifically moving gear, engine oil pumps, and valves. A Caterpillar vice president coldly stated that the Joliet location was not competitive for these particular components. The final chapter came swiftly. In November 2018, the last 285 employees received layoff notices. On June 30th, 2019, the plant had its final day of operation. July 10th, 2019 marked the end. After 68 years, the Caterpillar plant closed for good. But Joliet's story does not end with industrial decline. Even as manufacturing disappeared, city leaders were already pivoting toward a new economic model. The transformation began in the 1990s with riverboat gambling. The Empress Casino opened in 1992, followed by Harrah's Joliet in May 1993. These were not just entertainment venues, they were deliberate economic development tools. The two casinos and their ancillary businesses eventually employed over 3,700 people, with an annual payroll of around $100 million. The real game changer, however, was logistics. In a stroke of innovative land use, the Centerpoint Intermodal Center rose from the remains of the Joliet Arsenal, a World War II TNT manufacturing plant. In 2000, Congress conveyed 2,500 acres to Centerpoint Properties in what was described as a first-of-its-kind conversion of military property for private development. Construction began immediately, and by October 2002, the BNSF Intermodal Terminal and first warehouse were operational. This represented a fundamental shift in Joliet's economic DNA. Instead of making things, Joliet would move things. The city's strategic location, the same geographic advantages that had made it perfect for heavy industry, now made it ideal for logistics and distribution. The Centerpoint project alone created 5,000 jobs, with expectations of exceeding 8,000 at full build-out. The logistics boom attracted major players. Amazon, IKEA, Home Depot, Mars, Whirlpool, and dozens of other companies established distribution centers in the area. Amazon became particularly significant, eventually employing around 7,000 people across Will County, roughly the same number Caterpillar once employed in Joliet alone. Will County now houses what is considered the largest inland port in North America, handling over 3.5 million containers annually and ranking 5th in the nation. But here's where the wage replacement story becomes complicated. In 2012 dollars, Caterpillar workers earned up to $28 an hour. Today, Amazon warehouse workers earn $16 an hour. While the job numbers might seem similar, the compensation structure tells a different tale. Amazon warehouse associates in the Joliet area typically earn $15 to $20 per hour, with a median wage around $16.31. Compare this to Caterpillar workers who earned $13 to $28 per hour in 2012, and remember, that is in 2012 dollars. Even more important, the nature of the work and benefits changed dramatically. Caterpillar workers enjoyed defined benefit pensions, strong union protections, and the kind of job security that enabled multi-generational careers. Warehouse workers typically receive 401k plans, limited union coverage, and face much higher turnover rates driven by automation and demanding productivity quotas. Richard Hurd, a professor of labor studies at Cornell University, observed that it was one more small piece of evidence that the lower half of the income distribution is struggling while the people at the very top are faring quite well. The economic development establishment tried to put a positive spin on the transition. John Grueling, president and CEO of the Will County Center for Economic Development, told local media that the Caterpillar plant closing would have virtually no negative impact on the local economy since the company had been phasing out operations for years. But workers and their families experienced something different, what economists call the Walmart effect. where high-wage manufacturing jobs get replaced by lower-wage service sector employment. Today, 70% of Joliet's jobs are spread across 7 industries, with healthcare, social assistance, and retail trade comprising more than 35% of all employment. This diversification provides stability against single industry shocks, but it also represents a fundamental shift in the economic opportunities available to working-class families. The story took another turn in recent years with attempts to bring back manufacturing. In 2021, Lion Electric, a Quebec-based electric bus manufacturer, received $5.08 million in state tax incentives through the Illinois EDGE program and promised 1,400 jobs at the former Caterpillar site. Politicians celebrated the announcement as proof that good manufacturing jobs could return to Joliet. But in less than 2 years, Lion Electric collapsed, leaving the facility shuttered throughout 2023. This failure prompted soul-searching about Illinois' economic development strategies. Critics argued that the state's incentive programs were poorly targeted and lacked oversight, focusing too much on headline-grabbing announcements rather than sustainable long-term growth. The Lion Electric debacle cast doubt on whether the old model of attracting manufacturers with tax incentives could work in the modern economy. Hope emerged again in March 2026 when Hyundai Translead announced a $452.05 million investment to establish trailer manufacturing facilities on the former Caterpillar site, promising 2,475 new full-time jobs. Governor J.B. Pritzker called it a long-term commitment that will create 2,500 new jobs and opportunities for working families. But given the Lion Electric experience, many locals remained cautiously optimistic rather than celebratory. Meanwhile, the casino industry continued evolving. In 2024, Hollywood Casino Joliet opened a new $185 million land-based facility, ending its 3-decade run as a riverboat casino. The project created roughly 200 additional jobs, bringing the casino's total workforce to about 600. While significant, it pales compared to the thousands who once worked at Caterpillar. The broader implications of Joliet's transformation extend far beyond one city in Illinois. What happened here reflects a national trend where manufacturing employment declined from 35% of private sector workers in the 1950s to just 7% today. Cities across the Midwest faced similar transitions as globalization, automation, and changing corporate priorities eliminated the industrial jobs that once anchored middle-class communities. Some argue that Joliet's diversification represents successful adaptation to economic reality. The logistics sector provides stable employment, the casino industry generates tax revenue, and healthcare jobs offer career growth opportunities. The intermodal facilities position the region as a critical node in global supply chains, theoretically providing long-term economic security. Diversification has its defenders. Others contend that something irreplaceable was lost when the factory whistles fell silent. The social fabric built around industrial employment, where neighbors worked alongside each other for decades, where unions provided political voice, where a high school graduate could support a family on a single income, cannot easily be replicated in a service economy. A former Caterpillar worker captured this sentiment. It is really sad to me because I have 2 sons, and I wonder where they are going to work if this keeps going. The question is not whether his sons will find work. Will County's unemployment rate remains relatively low? The question is whether they will find the kind of work that builds communities and sustains families across generations. Today, a small exhibit in the downtown Joliet area historical museum pays homage to Caterpillar, noting that for over 50 years the Caterpillar Corporation was a major Joliet employer. It is a modest memorial to an economic era that shaped not just a city, but an entire way of life. The numbers tell part of the story. Amazon employs as many people as Caterpillar once did, the intermodal facilities handle millions of containers annually, and unemployment rates have stabilized. But numbers do not capture everything. They do not measure the difference between a $28 an hour union job with a pension and a $16 an hour warehouse position with a 401k. They do not quantify the social capital built through multi-generational employment or the political power that comes from concentrated industrial labor. Wages matter. Joliet's transformation from steel and machinery to logistics and casinos reflects broader changes in the American economy. Whether this represents progress, decline, or simply adaptation depends largely on your perspective and your position in the economic hierarchy. For some, it is a success story of diversification and resilience. For others, it is a cautionary tale about the hollowing out of industrial America. What is undeniable is that Joliet survived. The city that once had the nation's highest unemployment rate reinvented itself, attracted new industries, and provided employment for thousands of workers. Whether it replaced what was lost is a more complex question, one that continues to resonate in communities across America grappling with similar economic transformations. The Caterpillar plant may be gone, but its legacy lingers in the policy debates, development strategies, and personal stories that define modern Joliet. In many ways, the city's evolution mirrors the American economy itself, more diverse, more precarious, and more dependent on global forces beyond local control. The question is not whether change was inevitable, but whether communities can shape that change to preserve what matters most about work, family, and community in the 21st century.